In this study, we have some good news and some bad. I'll read you both. The reporter is called Henderson, and he was a medical director during the Second World War. He was an orthopedic surgeon, and he made a clinical comparison using the soldiers between those treated with chiropractic and those who had ordinary medical treatment.
Ha preso i suoi risultati e li ha mandati all'Associazione Medico-Americano che hanno solo 40 anni dopo.
He sent his results to the American Medical Association, which didn't make them public until 40 years later.
La chiropratica ha risultati impressivi.
His conclusion, chiropractic has impressive results with various medical failures, and chiropractic techniques produced results as fine as the best medical treatment and should be integrated into all Army clinical and orthopedic wards.
Clinica ortopedica dell'esercito.
He also noted that chiropractic had significant success with women in the final 3 months of pregnancy who were able to conclude their pregnancies and give birth with greater comfort when they received chiropractic treatment. As I said, it took 40 years for these results to appear, and eventually they came out during testimony in the Chicago District Court 40 years later. Our question is why such clear and happy news was hidden for so long.
Negli Stati Uniti, dove il costo della spesa medica sta sempre aumentando, c'è il fenomeno della ditta assicurativa.
In the United States, where health care costs are always rising, insurance companies work together with organizations of doctors at all levels to give the consumer private insurance and health treatment.
Tutto privato. C'è stato fatto nel 1982
In 1982, a study was made by one of the largest of these organizations in the entire southeast of the United States. 100 patients were sent to the Silverman Chiropractic Center. Before chiropractic adjustments, 80 of the 100 patients had been treated medically, seeing on the average 1.6 doctors each without results. 17 had a medical diagnosis of disc problems, and 12 were diagnosed as in need of urgent surgery to the disc. After the chiropractic treatment, 80% of the problems disappeared. No surgery was necessary, and all the disc problems were eliminated. No patients got worse. Now, the interesting thing is this. The medical director of this organization, which is called AviMed, who was responsible for this study, is Herbert Davis. He concluded that chiropractic and chiropractic adjustments had saved his organization $250,000 in surgical expenses. He said that as he had initially been very skeptical, this study had turned out to be an eye-opening experience for him.
$250,000 in spese chirurgico.
He had never imagined how effective chiropractic could be. That was Herbert Davis, an MD, director of the largest medical organization in the southeast of the United States.
Herbert Davis, medico tradizionale, direttore delle organizzazioni mediche più grandi nel sud-est degli Stati Uniti.
Professional formation. How did that tree get so big without medicine?
Nell'ultima puntata stavo parlando della scuola di chiropratica Palmer e continuerò a parlare, e nella puntata prima di quello parlavo di un studente di chiropratica che è stata mezza paralizzata in un incidente stradale e poi totalmente guarito.
In the last episode, I talked about the Palmer College of Chiropractic, and I'm going to say some more about that today. And before that, I spoke about the student who was paralyzed in an accident and completely recovered after his spine was put into its original position by a chiropractor. At Palmer, the body is observed in all its aspects, without giving an exaggerated emphasis to illness, because there we realized illness only occurs when we give the body a burden that it can't support. In the colleges of chiropractic, everyone becomes an expert in health, much more than a medical student who becomes an expert in pathology. This is a big advantage in today's world. And don't forget that we studied, with the exception of pharmacology and surgery, all the subjects that were taught in medical school. Frank Sabatino, the editor of the Underground newspaper, student body president, and first in his class, helped me to guide my thoughts to the most important considerations. He immediately suggested that I should read Herbert Shelton, who had overseen 60,000 fasts, to make me understand that we as doctors should not be necessary to anyone, except in the case of trauma or birth defects. The body is able to take care of itself, and we are simply compensating for the errors committed by the patients, their doctors, their intoxication, and our unnatural society. Frank taught me to repair the vertebral column, which meant understanding with enormous respect where its correct position is and how this protection of the central nervous system is decreased when it undergoes a subluxation. It also meant learning how to recognize the responsibility of the individual in removing the cause of disease. That means teaching doctors and patients to live in harmony in order to strengthen the organism completely by themselves, even without the doctor of chiropractic. From this starting point, I have become a human bridge leading those who need help to become those who don't need it anymore. And of course, I am an example of self-sufficiency.
Chi ha bisogno e chi non vuole aver più bisogno.
My first patient, myself.
Oggi parleremo delle allergie, come ho detto la volta scorsa, e questo è un campo in cui...
This episode is meant to answer the criticism I often hear that I seem too sure of myself. Rest assured that when I'm speaking in a professional capacity, this is because I really do know what I'm talking about. And when I don't, I keep quiet. Today, we're going to talk about allergies, a field in which I have a first-hand experience. When I was 5 or 6 years old, I went camping, and one of the games was running in the cornfields. Once, not knowing that pesticides had just been sprayed, I came out of the field and my face began to swell. My parents were obviously alarmed, and they took me to the allergist. I ought to tell you that my point of view in this field is not impartial, and there's a reason for this. By the way, I'm going to make a lot of allergists angry. But on the other hand, it will please a lot of patients. Let's look at the situation in this way. I've already mentioned that I was totally intoxicated before my birth. If inside our body poisons circulate due to the fermentation and putrefaction of undigested foods, then the addition of irritating substances, like pesticides, increases the load on the body's defenses, which must keep the poison outside. The first defenses are sight, smell, taste, the skin, intuition, and movement. Then if poisons pass these first 6 defenses, they enter the respiratory and digestive systems, then the blood, and all three have their defenses too. If we are reasonably clean, there are good defenses, and the reaction will be limited. If I, on the other hand, was so intoxicated that my swollen tonsils were already filled with poison, then the reaction was, of course, more severe. Where's the lie, then? Well, after 15 years of weekly anti-allergic pharmacological treatment, during which I never received even one piece of dietary advice, the diagnosis was always a genetic problem. I was condemned to suffer from allergies for the rest of my life. The problem is that this simply wasn't and isn't true. If we eat really badly, then the body becomes hypersensitive. If we eat properly, we can avoid all these problems. And that is what I did for the next 23 years, from the time that I was at chiropractic school until now. I want to save you these 23 years. The next episode will deal with the problem of biting my nails. Homework. Number 1, don't eat butter or oil that has been fried or heated. Number 2, fruit should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Number 3, proteins and carbohydrates should always be separated. Number 4, if you do not feel well in any way, don't eat proteins until later. Number 5, don't eat when you are angry, tired, or unhappy. Number 6, don't eat immediately before sleeping. Number 7, drink 4 liters of water per day, per weight approximately 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, on an empty stomach or 3 hours after the main meals, adding between 30 and 100 grams of honey per liter, and if you like, lemon juice. This is not for diabetics. Number 8, keep wrapped ice packs on the abdomen to the right and left of the navel for 6 to 24 hours a day, not if you're pregnant. Ice packs must be so well wrapped that no cold is felt. Number 9, decongesting massage with weights from 1/2 hour to 2 hours a day.
Ritirare gratis le dispense telefonando a Telesicilio Color 095 32 22 23.
Homework.
Fra una dieta normale, del quale parleremo più tardi, e le diete che abbiamo parlato la volta scorsa, di quei pochissime sostanze, acqua e miele e frutta che ci danno molto energia.
There is, of course, a difference between a normal diet, which we will talk about soon, and the diet we talked about last time, composed of very few substances: water, honey, and fruit. These give us energy when we are really weak, because any other kind of food would simply get stuck. If that's not clear, just think of those who are in a hospital on an IV and not eating. They don't get sandwiches or spaghetti with garlic and hot pepper because they would immediately block their digestion and suffocate them. When the individual is a little bit stronger, not really well, but able to chew and swallow and digest, assimilate and eliminate. Remember, the food mustn't just go in without problems, but the useless substances have to come out within 24 hours too. We go on to a detoxifying diet: water, honey, and fruit separate from meals, cereals in grains at lunch and dinner, together with vegetables and a salad. This is the detoxifying diet. Again, water and honey, lemon and fruit on an empty stomach for breakfast and for a break. You can cut down or eliminate the honey if you have glycemia problems. At lunch and supper, a diet based on whole grain cereals, rice, barley, wheat, millet, rye, not whole wheat bread or pasta, especially not one of those highly commercialized brands. The sort of bread or pasta products you find in a health food store where the quality of the product is not a problem will be added in the normal diet when the body is already healed. Eat as much as you want, but only when you're hungry and have already finished 4 liters of water first.
Frutta anche per merenda. Va bene? Alla prossima.
Now I see clearly.
Nella Scalisi.
Nella Scalisi is a very special person. She has received a national award from the National Business Bureau.
This honor is awarded by the President of the Italian Republic each year on the 1st of May. I received it in Palermo.
Nella came to my office because she was feeling very badly. She was so ill that she was about to quit her job.
Malissimo.
Cos'erano? 10 anni da male?
Sì.
Cosa hai detto? Mal di testa?
Mal di testa, mal di schiena.
Mal di collo?
C'era la cervicale e poi...
I suffered from a headache, backache and cervical pain, muscular pains and cramps. Before the therapy, my weight was 67 kilos, 152 pounds. Now I've lost 12 kilos, 24 pounds. I work happily and I'm self-sufficient.
You did your part, I did mine. Now, can you explain why you came here?
I met Paul through a relative of mine, and so I decided to give it a try too.
Project Genesis will help put other people in touch even though they don't have a relative who knows me, and they can help themselves at home.
Il dottor Rodberg mi ha cominciato a farmi dei massaggi.
Dr. Rothberg began with massage.
Let's be specific. Adjustment of the spinal column, lymphatic drainage.
And with the right diet, I gradually began to lose weight.
Did you lose anything you needed, or was it all unnecessary and toxic?
Oh, no, it was all toxic. Gradually, I recovered the balance I'd lost. Now I am self-sufficient and serene, thanks to Paul.
Ho riacquistato il mio equilibrio che avevo perso in un certo qual modo.
Quindi hai raggiunto quella promozione da ex paziente, sei autosufficiente. No?
Adesso sono autosufficiente, quindi, ripeto, ho ritrovato il mio equilibrio, sono contenta.
Possiamo dire alla gente? Prego, possiamo dire alla gente
Can we tell the listeners how old you are? No? Okay, we won't say. Well, Nella has never been on television before, and today she's done pretty well. Don't you think so? Thank you very much. See you soon.
All right.
E Nella che non è stata mai in televisione, oggi se l'ha cavata abbastanza bene. Io ti ringrazio. Ci vediamo per la prossima, va bene?
Va bene.
Ok.
Thank you.
For all dependent workers, the right to health care paid for by the employer is essential to survival, especially economic survival. In the state of Oregon, the workers' compensation carried out an investigation into the treatment of workers on sick leave as a consequence of backache.
Hanno fatto un'indagine sulle spese e sul tempo perso dai lavoratori fuori dal lavoro per mal di schiena. Questo studio è stato fatto facendo paragoni fra aggiustamenti chiropratiche e trattamenti.
This study involved the comparison of chiropractic and medical, non-surgical treatment, and it was run by a medical doctor, Roland A. Martin, in 1971.
I risultati sono molto semplici da capire. 42% tornavano a lavorare in una settimana dopo cura medica.
The results are very easy to understand. 42% returned to work within a week after medical care. 82% returned to work in 1 week under chiropractic care. Almost exactly twice as many. Conclusion? It's obvious. Chiropractic was twice as effective and the patient suffered half as much. It has been shown that almost all, between 90 and 97% of chiropractors, refer their patients to medical doctors when necessary. This shows an attitude of responsibility and professional collaboration.
Chiedete se il vostro medico tradizionale da famiglia ha l'abitudine di collaborare con dottori di chiropratica.
Ask your medical family doctor if he is in the habit of collaborating with a chiropractor. If not, you could choose a more open-minded physician, one prepared to collaborate with all health practitioners recognized by law, in order to be sure that you will be enjoying all the benefits offered by the health system. Don't be guided by those who don't put your health and your family's health first. Professional formation. How did that tree get so big without medicine?
Una bella esperienza la Palmer College of Chiropractic, così bella infatti che come tutti I miei colleghi ho fatto 4 anni in 3 studiando 12 ore al giorno e è stata favoloso.
My time as a student at the Palmer College of Chiropractic was a wonderful experience. So wonderful that almost all my colleagues were able to finish 4 years in 3. I personally studied 12 hours a day.
Per ordine alfabetico I miei amici ed io eravamo.
When I met Dr. Virgil Strang for the first time, he was teaching anatomy, and he made me laugh during the lesson because my friends and I, sitting in alphabetical order, were placed in the back of a room much too far away to see his demonstrations. In our frustration, we could only laugh. But the first time I took him seriously, apart from, of course, recognizing his incredible competence, was when I heard that he had 6 children who had never taken an aspirin or any medicine or vaccine in their lives and had never missed a day from school for illness. They hadn't even had the so-called childhood illnesses, mumps, measles, etc. When the children happened to hurt themselves or had misbehaved, his wife told him who was involved. He checked the spinal column, adjusted any misplaced vertebra, and explained to them that whatever they had done wrong was due in part to the shift of the vertebra, without criticizing them, without making them feel guilty. And I repeat, no medicines, no days off for illness, no childhood illnesses in 6 children. This man had obviously understood something that I had never understood, and it certainly caught my attention. Later on, in my junior and senior years, I attended 2 courses in chiropractic philosophy, and he was the teacher. In the chiropractic world, there was no one on his level, no one with his global vision and farsightedness. He was able to listen to a student's question, and instead of giving a simple answer, he tried to understand the student's starting point. And then during the lesson, he gave all the necessary historic, scientific background so that in the final minute, with his closing words, all the pieces of the puzzle came together, and the look of total comprehension and amazement dawned on the faces of all the students. I was so shocked by his brilliance and love for knowledge and teaching that he repeatedly moved me to tears. I had a huge admiration for him, and I of course still do, because he taught me when a person is sick or studying or just curious, not to give superficial answers, but to give the most complete and comprehensible answer possible. And so let me say thanks to Virgil Strang for his incredible intellectual clarity. It's not an accident that several years before his death, he was the president of the oldest chiropractic school in the world. The next time, we'll talk about subluxations, which block neurological transmission, and how to repair the vertebral column.
Uno spostamento vertebrale che blocca la trasmissione neurologica.
My first patient myself.
Quinta puntata sulla mia esperienza personale come paziente vista chiaramente dopo.
This is the 5th chapter of my personal experience as a patient, seen, of course, from my perspective after 20 years of clinical practice. Last time I said I would talk about the troublesome habit of biting one's nails. I can't think of anything more annoying for a patient than to hear stupid and useless explanations for his problems. My family doctor was intelligent, affectionate, and he was specializing in internal medicine. I know he had the respect and admiration of my parents, who are both very intelligent, but for this problem we had no success. When they or others spoke about my nail-biting problem, I heard the stupid answers you are familiar with. It is a habit, put bitter substances on the fingernails, and so on. It didn't work. And as I have said in other episodes, because my level of intestinal toxins was so high and had been so high since before I was born, my parents, always trying to feed their skinny baby, had unknowingly perpetuated the toxic level. After several years, my parents finally got some good advice. Quote, let him eat when he's hungry, like a cat. Leave dried cereal in a bowl, and when he's hungry, he'll eat, end quote. In this manner, the level of intoxication went down, and I started to eat. And I ate everything, right or wrong. But the putrefaction in my stomach created a level of nervousness that my childish immaturity couldn't identify. And so I bit my fingernails until I was 21. And I sucked my thumb until I was maybe 10 or 12 years old. It was crazy. A psychologist would say, well, there's something serious which is causing this boy's real problems. Well, there was. The constant putrefaction 3 to 5 times a day without a break and without professional competence. If you have this problem at home, don't psychoanalyze the behavior, but try to psychoanalyze your diet and look at the incredible social and global irresponsibility which derives from bad dietary habits. Sicily is a country which has had an almost entirely agricultural tradition, and people here know that when food tastes of nothing, it is because it has been treated artificially. So, when we are taught correctly, we can begin to realize the relationship that exists between the quality of the food we eat and the state of our health. The next time, I will talk about a very common problem, which usually makes people laugh, and that's air in the stomach and intestines. Homework. Number 1, don't eat butter or oil that has been fried or heated. Number 2, fruit should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Number 3, proteins and carbohydrates should always be separated. Number 4, if you do not feel well in any way, don't eat proteins until later. Number 5, don't eat when you are angry, tired, or unhappy. Number 6, don't eat immediately before sleeping. Number 7, drink 4 liters of water per day, per weight approximately 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, on an empty stomach or 3 hours after the main meals, adding between 30 and 100 grams of honey per liter, and if you like, lemon juice. This is not for diabetics. Number 8, keep wrapped ice packs on the abdomen to the right and left of the navel for 6 to 24 hours a day, not if you're pregnant. Ice packs must be so well wrapped that no cold is felt. Number 9, decongesting massage with weights from 1/2 hour to 2 hours a day.
Per informazioni e chiarimenti potete ritirare gratis le dispense telefonando a Telesicilio Color 095 32 22 23.
Sono sempre qui con il ghiaccio sulla pancia che toglie irritazioni, infiammazioni, fermentazioni, putrefazioni e spasmi.
This chapter is so very important for your understanding and your total healing that it is being repeated. Here I am again with ice packs on my stomach, protecting the skin with enough cloth to not feel cold, to take away inflammation and irritation, slow down the fermentation and putrefaction, and eliminate the spasms that will cause poisons to be blocked in the bowel. This is something that will do everyone good. And if you have any doubts, all you need to do is try, and your doubts will disappear. Today we're going to talk about the separation of foods, or as Herbert Shelton called it, food combining, which is known in Italy as the dissociated diet. It's taken a long time to become known, and I can tell you that because I've been here for 20 years. The idea behind food combining is the chemistry of our body. To give a practical example, we can imagine that there are three of us. The first is a fish eater, the second a fruit eater, the third an eater of pasta. As soon as we even think of eating, the specific enzymes present in our saliva are all ready for the food we have chosen. The chemistry of our body is so selective that it is impossible to put so many foods together and imagine that our digestive enzymes will still be at their highest level of efficiency. Proper food combining means, therefore, enjoying the food without damaging our body and at the same time eliminating the debts that we have already accumulated. To be more specific, fruit is digested in the mouth and in the small intestine. The enzymes are alkaline, and it's enough to chew well to digest quickly. Heavier carbohydrates require longer digestion, and that's why they are not eaten with fruit. Choose whole carbohydrates. First of all, the cereals: rice, wheat, barley, oats, millet, and rye. If you have forgotten these foods on an island that has had 15,000 generations of farmers, your history and your diet are both very poor. You only need to change to see the difference. Refined cereals are poor in taste, poor in minerals, poor in fiber. Better choose whole grains, which keep the bowel useful and vigorous and give us lots of energy and flavor. These cereals may be combined with vegetables and salads. Americans and French abuse butter, Italians olive oil. Doing without allows us to detoxify much faster and surprisingly regain our sense of taste and smell. Proteins are very important, but they require a more complex digestion. They offer a vast choice of quality and taste. Nuts can be eaten with salad, legumes with cereals and vegetables. If we're talking about fish, eggs, meat, and dietary products, be careful not to eat them with carbohydrates. Observing these simple rules means keeping the body healthy. You will see results immediately. See you next time.
E vediamo quanto di più rende il corpo. E ricordiamo, se stiamo male, lasciamo perdere il secondo per adesso, finché abbiamo tolto la putrefazione dell'intestino. Alla prossima.
Now I see clearly. Bringing a TV program to the public is hard work because I need to anticipate all your doubts and prejudices. But today, I can allow myself an enormous pleasure, that of presenting you a friend, one of my first patients, even before I had a license here. And the treatment cost 5,000 lira, that's $5 in 1980, for a half hour or more. Lilo Russo, who was one of the first intelligent people to put his faith in me when he was really in a bad way, desperate and suffering with severe lumbosciatic pain. But that's not all. His entire family followed him into chiropractic care, and his daughter Erica worked for me for more than 5 years in this office, and she wrote some of the materials that I've used for many years to present chiropractic, and I'm still using them today. So I'll introduce Lilo Russo, who will speak about his experience.
My experience has been positive. Otherwise, I would not be here. The first time, I came because I suffered from a terrible backache. I wasn't able to sleep, and the only way in which I could get any rest was in the fetal position. You adjusted my spinal column. I have to say that I wasn't able to follow the diet, and I have, unfortunately, continued to smoke. Even if you tell me, you just come here and I'll help you. Your adjustments have allowed me to feel well, and they've allowed me to regain faith in my life. A person who is still young has the right to lead an active life. I enjoy horseback riding and skiing, and many times, because of severe lumbosciatic pain, I've been unable to stand up. All of the medical doctors ordered me to stop my activity, diagnosing with X-rays damaged intervertebral discs. You have been able to eliminate the pain without forcing me to stop my activity. Now I'm well, and I don't need you anymore. You have not lost a patient, you have healed me.
That's really nice. I had practically no patients at that time, so he filled the office. All the things I wanted to learn from physically treating a patient, I learned from him.
Once I had a bad fall from a horse, and I couldn't move my body. With his expert chiropractic adjustments, Paul returned my vertebrae to their original position and flexibility. Paul has helped me to reconstruct and then to maintain physical form. Despite the traumas, I continue to develop my sporting activity and my work as well. I'm a full-time farmer and my body is always in movement. I don't have problems anymore and I'm very well.
Diciamo che ha funzionato.
Sì, molto bene.
Sono particolarmente contenta che Lilo Russo è venuto qui per diversi motivi, ma soprattutto perché lui...
I'm particularly happy that Lilo Russo came here because he does what I've always dreamed of. He doesn't expect me to say that he can do whatever he wants, and I don't expect him to do everything I tell him to. We exchange information, we're friends. He gets on with his life, entrusting his own health and that of his family to me, and so when I think of him, I'm happy he came to me. Thank you, Lilo.
Thanks to you, because I'm well.
Grazie a te, perché sto bene, quindi ti devo ringraziare.
Più prestigioso è il Yale University. In uno studio fatto da Dr. Schimmel, medico tradizionale, all'ospedale di New Haven, Connecticut, dove sta Yale. Ha fatto un'indagine e ha tirato queste conclusioni.
One of the most prestigious American universities is Yale. In a study conducted in the New Haven, Connecticut hospital in 1964, Dr. Schimmel, an MD, found that every year 100,000 people die of unexpected consequences of pharmacological treatment. But the number might even be as high as 200,000 patients a year. That is, between 2,000 and 4,000 patients die every week as a result of reaction to drugs. The same kind of problem occurs from unnecessary surgery, killing between 3,000 and 5,000 every week. We would like to see a more intelligent and more active kind of interprofessional collaboration that could help save these lives. Another of the three most prestigious medical universities in the United States is called Johns Hopkins. A study was carried out there by the medical doctor Leighton Clough. In 1965, his study showed that 1 in 6 of hospitalized patients are forced to stay in the hospital too long because of reactions to drugs administered irresponsibly by that hospital.
Lì è stata fatta un'indagine del medico tradizionale Leighton Clough in 1965. Le sue indagini dimostravano che 14%, questo è 1 in 6, di ogni paziente in ospedale restano nell'ospedale troppo tempo dovuto a reazione avversa, dovuta ai dei farmaci che hanno preso.
Professional formation. How did that tree get so big without medicine?
100 anni fa, Daniel David Palmer, il primo dottore di chiropratica, ha effettuato la prima riposizione.
100 years ago, Daniel David Palmer, the first chiropractic doctor, carried out the first chiropractic repositioning of the bones of the vertebral column on a man called Harvey Lillard, a man who is famous throughout the world of chiropractors as someone who had lost his hearing bending over 17 years before being adjusted by Palmer. He heard a noise in his spine at that same moment. Palmer had examined his spinal column, he had felt the malpositioned vertebra, and he convinced Harvey Lillard to let him try to adjust it with his hands using a system based on short lateral vertebral levers. He did so, and afterwards Harvey Lillard could hear a clock in the same room. The sounds of the wheels in the street several floors below, too. A historic moment that Daniel David Palmer created the chiropractic profession on the basis of this first reaction, this rebalancing of the body. He wrote prolifically, and his son Benjamin Joshua opened the Palmer School and Clinic of Chiropractic, which was the world's first. This kind of malpositioning of the vertebra is called a subluxation. Not so bad as a luxation, but sufficiently out of position to cause interference with neurological transmission and to create an alteration in the correct behavior or sensitivity of the individual. In chiropractic college, we study 12 manual subjects in order to feel every possible position of the vertebral column in young, old, fat, thin, male and female patients. We learned the most safe and efficient biomechanical techniques to reduce the subluxations and return the spinal column back to its correct position, which in the case of the French medical student who was half paralyzed, re-established lost communication between the body and its innate intelligence that constructed the body, thereby regaining its governing role in the maintenance, growth, and recovery of the human body in all conditions and moments of our lives. A crazy idea, but above all, wonderful, true, and easy, as we will demonstrate here.
Un'idea pazzesco e più pazzesco perché è bellissimo, vero, facile e noi la dimostreremo qua.
My first patient, myself.
Parlerò di un problema molto comune che io l'avevo 25-26 anni della mia vita e quello è aria nella pancia.
I'm going to talk about a very common problem from which I suffered for 25 years of my life. Air in the stomach and intestines, constantly. The first time you notice it is at school, when your friends tell you, you're thin but you have a bloated stomach. Or at home, the inopportune release of air which makes brothers and sisters laugh. It makes parents laugh too, except when they have to find a solution for the problem, if they even imagine that this indicates a basic problem. But the truth is that everyone in my family had this problem until I was 28, and I learned how to eat in a different manner. Remember that air in the stomach doesn't come from having swallowed air. That's not how it works. And it doesn't come from carbonated drinks, because that is burped straight out, and that's the end of it. Air accumulating in the stomach is simply an indication of the presence of foods that have not been digested properly. And there can be many reasons for this. It may be because we are too angry, and we shouldn't be eating at all, and the food putrefies inside us, or we are too tired, or we have the terrible habit of going to bed straight after eating, which is a guarantee that our tiredness will not allow us to digest properly, or to breathe properly, or even to sleep properly. When we wake up, we feel slightly drugged by the fermentation going on in our stomachs. But the point is this: we have to learn to eat in a way that respects the physiology and anatomy and timing of the body. Eating fruit after a meal is a guarantee of fermentation. Fruit has no business in the stomach. It is digested in the mouth and in the small intestine. So if it gets blocked in the stomach after a meal has been eaten, it will inevitably start fermenting. The same is true for carbohydrates and proteins, which are chemically very different. I'll give you a list. Carbohydrates, which include fruit, bread, pasta, cereals, and potatoes, for example, are digested, as I said, in the mouth and in the intestines in an alkaline environment. Protein, fish, eggs, meat, nuts, dairy products, or legumes, vegetarian or not, are digested in the stomach in acids. Mixing these two categories of foods, as people always do here, and and in many other parts of the world, is a 100% guarantee of putrefaction. And this means that the hunger we felt has not been satisfied, our energy production isn't enough to perform the activities we need to perform, and as a consequence, we will be constantly dissatisfied with our performance in everyday tasks. Next time, I'll talk about trembling hands, a problem I used to suffer from and which caused me enormous problems. See you next time.
Prossima volta parlerò del tremore delle mani, un problema che avevo, che mi aveva creato grossissimo problema e voglio parlarvi di quello la prossima volta.
Homework. Number 1, don't eat butter or oil that has been fried or heated. Number 2, fruit should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Number 3, proteins and carbohydrates should always be separated. Number 4, if you do not feel well in any way, don't eat proteins until later. Number 5, don't eat when you are angry, tired, or unhappy. Number 6, don't eat immediately before sleeping. Number 7, drink 4 liters of water per day, per weight approximately 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, on an empty stomach or 3 hours after the main meals, adding between 30 and 100 grams of honey per liter, and if you like, lemon juice. This is not for diabetics. Number 8, keep wrapped ice packs on the abdomen to the right and left of the navel for 6 to 24 hours a day, not if you're pregnant. Ice packs must be so well wrapped that no cold is felt. Number 9, decongesting massage with weights from 1/2 hour to 2 hours a day.
Per informazioni e chiarimenti potete ritirare gratis le dispense telefonando a Telesicilio Caller 095 32 22 23.
Homework.
La discussione per oggi è sull'integrale. Abbiamo dei grossi problemi in
Today's discussion is about whole foods. We have a lot of problems with TV and in advertising because words can be used even when they don't correspond to reality. Whole means alive. It means we could take that rice, barley, wheat, rye, and corn, sow it, and expect an autonomous living plant. Now, in the name of, quote, convenience and speed, modern life, modern society, end quote, any excuse you like, when our intestine is not getting food of this quality, we will never realize our full potential as living human beings. Let's compare rice that has already been refined and whole rice, which is alive, preferably organic, with as little artificial fertilizer as possible. Firstly, the refined food is less tasty. It's less substantial. It forms a kind of glue inside the intestinal walls, which blocks them so that the next food that gets eaten cannot be assimilated efficiently either, and rots, even if it is the right type of food. And that's the end of it. If we take whole grain rice, on the other hand, first, it's tastier. It's more nourishing. It's alive, even if in a dormant state. So there's no doubt it gives you more energy. It contains more fiber, so when it passes the intestinal walls, it cleans them and makes them more efficient for the next meal that comes along. And it does something else as well. It absorbs the existing poisons and carries them away with the feces. Can we really say that these two systems of eating are comparable? No. But how many people have ever had even one meal with whole grain rice? Why? Because so much more money has been spent in our recent history for promotion than for education in all walks of life, but especially in the so-called healthcare system. We need vital energy. Prove it to yourself. You can make whole grain bread and pasta. If the ingredients are sound, mix it, knead it, roll it, and cook it, and eat even 350, 400 grams at once of whole grain pasta and digest it immediately. And after an hour, you're hungry again because it has already been digested. And then you realize what a fraud you've been subjected to all your life, eating foods that are certainly of an inferior quality, that subtract energy instead of adding energy.
Subito, e dopo un'ora vi viene fame, così sapete che fregatura avete vissuto tutta la vita.
Now I see clearly.
Nell'ambiente musicale 5 anni fa ho avuto l'opportunità.
While playing music 5 years ago, I had the chance to meet a really special friend with a funny name, Nunni, who is going to talk to us. I asked her to come here, not because I wanted to produce one testimonial after another, but because she has always insisted that this is a message that needs to get to the public, and Project Genesis gives us the chance to transmit this message.
Bene, sono contentissima innanzitutto che mi ha invitato qui appunto a testimoniare quello che credo.
Well, first of all, I'm very pleased you invited me here. Chiropractic is an important part of our lives. It has a teaching message which brings self-awareness, and the fact that people are beginning to get this message means that the mentality here is gradually opening. As for me, I have to admit that at first I was a bit worried. If you remember, I knew you first as a musician. It was difficult for me to get used to the idea of Paul Rodberg as a doctor.
Diversamente dal musicista.
Well, I have to say that it was very difficult for me to be an unknown and underappreciated foreigner. All I wanted was to be myself.
That's true. Plus, I had to face a situation that was completely new for me. I mean, a doctor who gives you the possibility of choosing. It's new for us. We are really not used to it. Our doctors just give us medicines, which don't work when we have little problems, caused by stress of work, perhaps, like colitis or nervousness. Those medicines just intoxicate us even more. I had to thank you for having helped me during a period which was very difficult. I had to make some important decisions, both professionally and personally. My work had come to a point when things were going so badly that I really needed a clear mind and a lot of strength to make responsible decisions. Your help gave me the strength to achieve this open-mindedness, this freedom of choice.
Bisogna fare delle scelte importanti, bisogna avere veramente la forza e la mente proprio libera. Io non ce l'avevo e la chiropratica mi dava questa apertura mentale, questa libertà di scelta.
Can you explain in your own words, in non-scientific terms, exactly what detoxification means?
Yes. It's basically a natural biological way of purifying the lymphatic mechanisms so that the blood can pass in a natural way without obstacles. And with the kind of diet we have here, which is rather heavy, and with all the stress we accumulate, these lymphatic canals often get blocked. So detoxifying is concerned with those points which allow this lymph to pass in a natural way.
E allora la chiropratica va a smuovere proprio quei punti che danno la possibilità di affluire questa linfa in maniera naturale.
There's also neurological transmission, breathing, exercise, education. Processes which are already natural must again be felt instinctively. This allows the patient to understand his or her problems in terms of its components so that together we can adopt an intelligent and thus physiologically recuperating strategy for healing. That is, eliminating the debts that come from our unnatural lifestyles.
It's a question of solving a lot of problems in a natural way, in a biological way. And for me at least, this has been the best solution. I have resolved so many problems, and I'm happy to be here to tell people about it.
I think everyone's realized that.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Penso che l'hanno capito.
Me lo auguro.
Grazie.
Prego, figurati. Grazie.
È semplicemente uno strumento che cerca di sviluppare in voi la
Paul is simply an instrument.
della vostra
He teaches you to develop your health awareness, what it means to be well and to be sick, so that each of you can become, I don't mean your own doctor, but aware of your body, of your energies, and have the ability of using your body and the infinite capacity that life itself has placed inside you.
per utilizzare al meglio questa nostra macchina e quello che ci sta dentro.
La Commissione della Nuova Zelanda ha fatto
A New Zealand government commission conducted an inquiry into chiropractic.
è stata fatta in
It lasted for 20 months,
Grande
and
Bretagna
it was conducted in Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the United States.
su dei
It cross-examined under oath
medici
the leading educators,
campo della
doctors,
manipolazione della colonna
and researchers in the field of manipulation of the vertebral column.
conclusa in ottobre 1979
The study started in January 1978
e analizzata
and ended in October 1979. The report compiled and analyzed 3,638 pages of transcripts, 1,600,000 words, received, I repeat, under oath, and summarized it into a book of 377 pages. Some of its conclusions are fascinating.
da applicare nel sistema sanitario. È basata scientificamente e
Number one,
usa un corpo di
spinal adjusting is a vital,
fa parte
impressively safe,
e la
and
scienza.
clinically effective form of health care.
Dottori di chiropratica
It
hanno
is scientifically based
dubbio ragionevole
and uses the existing body of medical and scientific knowledge.
nella meccanica spinale
Number two,
e nella
chiropractors have,
terapia
beyond
manuale
reasonable doubt,
che
a more
qualsiasi
thorough
altro
training in spinal mechanics and spinal manual therapy than any other health professional.
del sistema sanitario che non sono dottori di chiropratica.
Number three, the
evitare
other healthcare professions should defer spinal adjustments to chiropractors since they are the best qualified.
più qualificati.
Part-time and vacation courses should not be encouraged.
Hanno fatto seminari a breve scadenza o durante le loro vacanze.
Number four,
non dovrebbero essere incoraggiati
spinal adjustments must only be done by full-time practitioners of the art.
Numero 4, aggiustamento della colonna vertebrale, quindi dovrebbe essere fatto solo delle
Number five,
praticatori.
there must be total cooperation between all healthcare professionals since it represents a more scientific posture and is in the public's interest.
fra tutti il sistema sanitario, perché questo rappresenta
Number six,
un approccio più scientifico.
there should be chiropractors in all hospitals as part of the healthcare team. It is better for body alignments to be relieved, if possible, by natural rather than artificial or chemical means. I repeat, this is the result of a 20-month study undertaken by the New Zealand government.
Un'indagine da 20 mesi fatta dal governo della Nuova Zelanda.
Professional formation. How did that tree get so big without medicine? The movement of cerebrospinal fluid is not something beyond your comprehension. The body is constructed to survive. The physical injuries that we receive and that cause internal bleeding are one thing in our bodies, but inside the brain, inside the spinal cord, from the brain to the sacrum, the body cannot allow any internal bleeding. And so it builds itself a network of filters at the base of the brain to filter the blood which will go inside the ventricles and the spinal cord. Here, the fluid movement is very slow. Anyone who has ever gone to examine his cerebral spinal fluid, a spinal tap, knows that the headache that follows can last up to a week while the body reestablishes the balance between these basic liquids. If one of the vertebrae is out of alignment due to any overload of our capacities, tiredness, stress, worry, intoxication, lack of fitness, a trauma, or whatever, so that it moves out of position and momentarily interrupts the flow of cerebral spinal fluid, every function of the body is compromised. That's why we say that chiropractic doesn't treat illnesses and does not offer therapy for the body. It's because chiropractic is more precisely a specific biomechanical and neurophysiological interior maintenance at a deeper level than illness and symptoms. This is an idea which is not easy to hear, understand, and appreciate in the midst of all the propagandistic brainwashing that's directed at us by the unimaginably rich and powerful pharmaceutical multinationals. When the hips are off-center, the movement between the sacrum at the base of the spine and the occipital area at the base of the skull lose their harmonious action and create a level of imbalance in the pumping of the cerebrospinal fluid within the central nervous system. When the chiropractor frees the vertebral column from subluxation and therefore from interference of neurological transmission, he or she is at the same time assuring the proper flow of cerebrospinal fluid. The more you study the body and the mind, the more you realize the immensity of universal intelligence at work in all living things. In fact, some splendid work has been done with children suffering from Down's syndrome through the collaboration of chiropractors and osteopaths, above all in England, re-establishing movement of the cranial bones and in the spinal column, and subsequently the movement of the cerebrospinal fluid in young babies before the cranial soft spots mature and harden incorrectly. Next time, we'll talk about lymphatic drainage, a very poorly understood subject which is usually treated very superficially. My first patient, myself.
Siamo di nuovo alla rubrica in cui io parlo della mia esperienza con la salute dal punto di vista del paziente nelle vivissime speranze.
Here we are again at the section in which I talk about my own health experience from the point of view of the patient, in the fervent hope of giving you a greater insight into a new and better way of looking at your own problems.
Dicendo che quando non siamo in grado di soddisfare la nostra fame, perché I cibi che abbiamo scelto l'abbiamo messo in una combinazione sbagliata.
Last time we talked about air in the stomach, saying that when we are not able to satisfy our hunger because we have combined the foods incorrectly or in the wrong moment, our life stops running smoothly. It's like planning a car journey and discovering that the car consumes a lot more gas than we expected, so that the expense of the trip is higher than it should be. Consequently, we have to leave something out that we had previously planned. Today I want to talk to you about trembling hands. I had this problem during a particularly happy period in my life, so it didn't depend on emotional stress. I belonged to the National High School Honor Society, had a lot of friends, played in a wonderful band, and was living right on the outskirts of town among forests and fields. Our family doctor, who, as I have said several times, had the complete trust and respect of my parents, had no explanation or solution for my shaking hands. I can tell you now that if I expend more energy than I have available, because I digest badly, the fuel that should be burnt by the muscles is insufficient in quality and quantity. The doctor asked if when I was meditating, which we will talk about another time, my hands shook less. I said yes. Meditation is looking for silence and clarity, a form of prayer. So his diagnosis was that it was a nervous problem. Now, many years later, I can see what a stupid thing to say that was. I had had useless surgery, useless nausea for years, glasses, years of medicines for allergies, which I wouldn't have needed at all if only I had known how to eat. And the only thing he could say was that it was a nervous problem. Total failure on the part of my family doctor. Next time we'll talk about my first attempt at vegetarianism.
Ok? Totale fallimento del mio medico di famiglia. Prossima volta parleremo del mio primo tentativo di fare il vegetariano.
Compiti per casa.
Homework. Number 1, don't eat butter or oil that has been fried or heated. Number 2, fruit should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Number 3, proteins and carbohydrates should always be separated. Number 4, if you do not feel well in any way, don't eat proteins until later. Number 5, don't eat when you are angry, tired, or unhappy. Number 6, don't eat immediately before sleeping. Number 7, drink 4 liters of water per day, per weight approximately 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, on an empty stomach or 3 hours after the main meals, adding between 30 and 100 grams of honey per liter, and if you like, lemon juice. This is not for diabetics. Number 8, keep wrapped ice packs on the abdomen to the right and left of the navel for 6 to 24 hours a day, not if you're pregnant. Ice packs must be so well wrapped that no cold is felt. Number 9, decongesting massage with weights from 1/2 hour to 2 hours a day.
Potete ritirare gratis le dispense telefonando a Telesicilio Color 095 32 22 23.
Homework. We deliberately excluded proteins from the detoxifying diet, and that makes everyone worry. I'm not saying that the human body doesn't need proteins, but these proteins need to get to the spleen before they start to putrefy. Otherwise, we're going to have big problems. We've said that our body can survive for 2 months without food before dying. So, when patients who've been subjected to intoxication from smoking and medicines and putrefaction get the chance to clean out their systems without protein, there is no need to worry. And it's going to take a long time. It really takes years, but in the first 2 months, you can do a lot. It's like taking the wrong road. What is most important is first to realize it. Second, turn around. And third, accelerate by doing your homework seriously. Now, when is it that we can reintroduce proteins? Well, the answer is when there are no intestinal obstacles, when we can chew and digest and assimilate and eliminate these proteins in 24 hours, and when all of our symptoms have left. The problem with an immature approach to diets is that the patient thinks, the doctor said that I can eat meat, fish or eggs, and so he eats them all the time. But what I want to teach you is a more responsible attitude. If you've done a week or two of detoxifying, and now you're starting to eat proteins again, you might try doing it on alternate days. Just eating fish with salad, for example, or for vegetarians, a plate of legumes and salad for lunch, and in the evening, just a bit of vegetables, so that there is no chance of congestion. When there is a loss of energy in our lives, which certainly compromises the intestinal efficiency, then go back to the detoxifying diet. Don't get the idea that previously I was sick, now I'm well, so I don't need to take any special dietary precautions. It's our responsibility to keep our intestines clean and in good working order. This way of changing from a detoxifying diet to a normal diet with proteins and whole foods, and vice versa, is our own responsibility, and no one is ever going to change that. In the next episode, we'll talk about vegetarianism.
Prossimo puntato su vegetarianismo.
Now I see clearly.
In
this program of health education, we have always talked about a message that Marco knows well. His work at the Teatro Stabile in Catania gave us the chance to meet. I asked him if he would be willing to give you his opinion about health and explain his ideas, especially concerning the responsibility that each one of us has for our own health. He will begin right away with his own views, without any questions from me.
Con il suo punto di vista, senza le mie domande.
Credo che esistano, quando si parla di salute si parla soprattutto secondo me di cibo, e quando si parla di cibo generalmente si parla solo di cose materiali, cioè nel senso che il cibo è i primi piatti, il pesce, la carne, la verdura.
When we deal with health, we talk above all about food. And when we talk about food, we mean something material, that is, the food that we eat.
L'uomo, siccome è una struttura molto complessa, credo che poi mi avrà parlato dell'uomo nelle sue varie composizioni, non solo fisiche, credo che quando si parla di salute...
Man has a very complex structure, and I believe that Paul has already talked about the various human components.
Quello che noi diamo al nostro corpo quotidianamente più volte al giorno.
I believe that when we talk about health, it's necessary to think that material food is not the only one, although of course it's fundamental, and of course the body certainly needs it.
Olistica, chiamiamola così per intenderci, cioè dell'uomo globale, esistono anche altri tipi di cibo. Abbiamo, per esempio,
there are many types of food from my point of view, and not only from my point of view, but from that of the medicine which is called esoteric. But perhaps it would be better to refer to it as natural or holistic, in the sense that it sees the human being globally.
Cioè la qualità del nostro pensiero. E poi c'è ancora un'altra fonte di cibo che è la...
There is the food that we receive from our breathing, that is, from the quality of our breathing. Breathing is a source of food for our body.
I quattro cibi fondamentali che servono all'uomo.
Then there's another source of important food. That's our thoughts, the quality of our thoughts.
La capacità che noi abbiamo di respirare.
And then there's another source of food, which is the quality of our emotions.
Non bisogna trascurare queste quattro qualità. Quando si fa un'indagine, secondo me da un punto di vista...
Therefore, these four foods that serve man are solid foods, aerial foods, thoughts and emotions.
Non solo cosa mangia, cosa beve, ma che tipo di qualità di vita ha. La qualità della vita è data non solo da cosa...
When we talk about medicine, we cannot disregard these qualities.
Che tipi di emozioni uno tende a sviluppare o tende a coltivare.
When a clinical investigation is done, it's necessary to understand how the patient nurtures himself from these 4 points of view and ask about the quality of life he has.
Va tutto male, il lavoro mi va male, questo mi va male, quell'altro mi va male.
This is a very wide and complex subject that leads us to understand many things about the patient. For instance, if a person complains that his life is negative, that everything goes against him, and that he can't face life, he will create more negative situations for himself. And then he won't be able to face them. And by propagating a vicious cycle of negative energy, he continues to worsen his situation. Instead, we must try to think positively and to develop the positiveness towards others and ourselves. This is already a source of extraordinary food.
Questa è già una fonte di cibo assolutamente straordinario, non solo per chi lo produce, ma anche per le persone che ti stanno intorno. Tant'è vero che nel sud, no, nella cultura napoletana, per esempio, c'è quello che porta sfortuna, si dice. Quelli che portano sfortuna sono per lo più persone che hanno questo atteggiamento negativo nei confronti della vita.
Uno dei più importanti ortopedici della città di Chicago ha diretto.
In 1987, one of the most important orthopedists of the city of Chicago directed a study on the value of chiropractic care in 2 hospitals where he was on the staff. It's worth pointing out that this professor not only had a degree in medicine, a specialization in orthopedics, but also a PhD. He made a clinical comparison of the medical orthopedic wards of 2 hospitals where patients with low back ailments were treated. One of the hospitals incorporated chiropractic care with its medical care. The other did not. These observations were made by the leading medical orthopedist, Dr. Per Freytag. Results? The hospital incorporating chiropractic care had patients whose in-hospital stay averaged 5 to 7 days, whereas the average stay for patients in the hospital not providing chiropractic care averaged 2 weeks. Hence, the hospital using chiropractic care was sending patients home and back to work 7 to 9 days earlier. Medical expenses for hospital care in America are not less than $500 per day, so the savings were between $3,500 and $4,500 per person, which came out of the pocket of the patient or his insurance company, and that money ultimately comes from the patient through his insurance costs. Dr. Freitag also noted that chiropractic care was bringing comfort to women in their third trimester of pregnancy, reducing their need for painkillers. This also supports the findings of the Henderson Report during the Second World War. Dr. Freitag's study is from 1987.
Che avevo trovato dottore Henderson nella Seconda Guerra Mondiale, questo invece 1987. Nel 1986 l'ufficio governativo degli Stati Uniti dell'America nel campo della salute pubblica.
In 1986, the United States Office of Public Health concluded after an extensive 13-year study that 2/3 of over-the-counter drugs do not fulfill the promoter's claim. In fact, the producers of these medicines spend more on advertising than they do on research, according to testimony given to the United States Congress.
Che per ricerca, secondo una testimonianza avanti del Congresso degli Stati Uniti.
Paul è semplicemente uno strumento che cerca di sviluppare in voi.
Paul is simply an instrument. He teaches you to develop your health awareness, what it means to be well and to be sick, so that each of you can become, I don't mean your own doctor, but aware of your body, of your energies, and have the ability of using your body and the infinite capacity that life itself has placed inside you.
Di poter utilizzare al meglio questa nostra macchina e quello che ci sta dentro.
Professional formation. How did that tree get so big without medicine?
Tutti gente parlano del drenaggio linfatico come se fosse...
Everyone talks about lymphatic drainage as if it was something that was very easy to understand. It ought to be, and I'm going to explain it to you, and when I explain it, you'll feel surprised and disappointed to have been lied to before. First of all, we need to understand that the circulatory system is composed primarily of the heart, which pumps the blood around the body. The blood which has been nourished and oxygenated, pumped everywhere. Obviously, with the help of the lungs, which provide oxygen, and a good digestion, which provides other useful substances. The system of the arteries carries these useful substances from the heart to all parts of the body. The veins complete the circuit and carry it all back to the heart. Now, let's imagine that I get a cut with some poisonous substance on my hand, for example. The body doesn't want that poison to get into the veins and go straight back to the heart, or to the brain, or the lungs, or the eyes. And so, there's a parallel system known as the lymphatic system. Now, the lymphatic system should be like a deposit of money in the bank, which is never touched throughout your life. It's a reserve which is able to make your whole arm swell up if needed, as the immune system defends the heart from these poisons. But what really happens in everyday, non-traumatic circumstances? People eat badly, and the fermented, putrefied foods fill up the system. They smoke, and the body is not designed to eliminate smoke, just as it's not designed for putrefaction, not designed to eliminate at the rate it is filled. People abuse medicines year after year without treating the real cause of the illness. And the same thing happens with alcohol. The body is not built to deal with alcohol, and so the lymphatic system fills up. If and when it is emptied, the body returns to the organic and muscular performance that it had before. So that at a therapeutic level, when a person who has had his lymphatic system blocked has it unblocked, they feel an incredible sense of release. In fact, when we're talking about diet and we insist on a lot of water, 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, it's simply because the system has been subjected to abuse and it needs to be cleaned out if it's ever going to work properly again. So, to get things in the proper perspective, first there's the neurological transmission, then breathing, then digestion, then there's the elimination of poisons, and so lymphatic drainage is in the 4th category. Be aware, all of you who have undergone a lymphatic drainage of any type without changing your diet, without removing the cause of the problem. You've been cheated. It's just a trick, one of the worst in the field of natural medicine. Next time we'll talk about the meaning of the term biological.
Prossima volta parleremo di cosa significa biologico.
My first patient, myself.
Quando avevo 21 anni, avevo appena finito la laurea in scienze biologiche e ho vinto un'audizione come musicista.
When I was 21, I had just completed my degree in biology, and I had won an audition as a musician. And so for the first time in my life, I was away from home 50 weeks a year. The idea of going around looking for an allergist never occurred to me, because I had never seen any results anyway. New places, new friends, new music, and new responsibilities. I had heard the wonderful idea of eating without taking the life of other living beings, or at least other animals, so I became a vegetarian, and like I'm afraid a lot of people, doing it my own way. I got everything wrong. I ate anything that wasn't meat, all together at all times of the day, and I simply became an intestinal gas factory. I had good intentions, but I didn't know the rules. It's not enough to avoid eating meat to help the body. The body needs carbohydrates and proteins separately. It needs fruit away from meals instead of eating all of them together. When we decide to avoid animal proteins, which is not the biggest health problem in itself, we can eat legumes and nuts. Of course, there are different levels of vegetarianism. Some people say that you can eat dairy products, which have a rather high fat content, or only eggs, or non-fertilized eggs, or fish. As I said, there are different levels. But the basic rules are always the same. Carbohydrates and proteins shouldn't be put together. Fruit should be eaten on an empty stomach. And the body always needs 1 liter of water for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, or fruit juice or vegetable broth every day.
La frutta deve essere sempre a stomaco vuoto.
And the rules for proteins are the same whether you're a vegetarian or a carnivore. Next time, we'll talk about the first time I was given a chiropractic adjustment.
Parleremo la prossima volta della prima volta che ho ricevuto un aggiustamento chiropratico.
Homework. Number 1, don't eat butter or oil that has been fried or heated. Number 2, fruit should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Number 3, proteins and carbohydrates should always be separated. Number 4, if you do not feel well in any way, don't eat proteins until later. Number 5, don't eat when you are angry, tired, or unhappy. Number 6, don't eat immediately before sleeping. Number 7, drink 4 liters of water per day, per weight approximately 1 liter for every 15 kilos or 30 pounds, on an empty stomach or 3 hours after the main meals, adding between 30 and 100 grams of honey per liter, and if you like, lemon juice. This is not for diabetics. Number 8, keep wrapped ice packs on the abdomen to the right and left of the navel for 6 to 24 hours a day, not if you're pregnant. Ice packs must be so well wrapped that no cold is felt. Number 9, decongesting massage with weights from 1/2 hour to 2 hours a day.
Ritirare gratis le dispense telefonando a Telesicilio Color 095 32 22 23.
Homework.
Vegetarianismo per convinzioni morali, per gusto, per prova. Qualsiasi è la vostra...
Vegetarianism has a lot to offer, whether you take it up out of moral conviction, for health, beauty, world, or personal economics, or just curiosity. I promise not to make a moral stance here. I'll just explain how to do it if you want. If the idea frightens you, hang on for 2 minutes and we'll move on to another topic, okay? There's nothing to be afraid of. Some highly spiritually evolved peoples have eaten meat, and some equally spiritually evolved peoples have been vegetarians. I'll just say this again about vegetarianism. It's not enough to not eat meat to satisfy the body. It always needs water, fruit, vegetables, cereals, legumes, and nuts and seeds. Now, the body has no big trouble combining proteins and carbohydrates if they are all vegetable. But separate is always easier. The most interesting sources of protein from our point of view are the legumes, seeds, and nuts. A handful of nuts is as difficult to digest as a steak. We need to be careful not to do ourselves a lot of harm with the excuse that we're vegetarians and we can eat anything else we like. I'm not a great fan of dairy products personally. For taste, yes. For health, no. Other people have different points of view. I'll just tell you what a colleague of mine who grew up on a farm said to me. Quote, "You people must be crazy. When an animal, any animal, has stopped taking its mother's milk, that's it. And the idea of giving a cat milk in a saucer is just something out of the cartoons. It'll give your cat diarrhea because that milk is meant for calves." End quote. So, if you want to clean up your body and eat fruit or whole cereals for breakfast, and for lunch and supper a combination of vegetables and legumes or nuts, not both together, or whole grain cereals, vegetables, and salad, you can live very well indeed. Your blood will become really clean, and you'll feel a wonderful interior clarity and a sense of limitless potential. I did it for many years, and I almost always still do. It's a great way to live, okay? Next time we'll talk about diet and training.
Va bene? Adesso, prossimamente parleremo di dieta e allenamento.
Now I see clearly.
Lo scopo di questo programma
The aim of this program and of this special interview is to make you realize that we need a strategy that is not only intuitive, but also external, to help us keep a balanced outlook on the path we need to follow.
Sì, questo direi che è fondamentale. Soprattutto, cioè, bisogna pensare che esiste come dicevano anche prima quando si stava parlando tra di noi, esiste una struttura.
What Paul is saying is fundamental. Above all, we need to think in terms of the politics of power, because the healthcare system is a big business. It's a multinational corporation.
Sono le case farmaceutiche. Voi sapete che quasi un 15-20, se non forse di più, 20% delle malattie dell'uomo.
This corporation is the source of profit for many, above all for the pharmaceutical companies.
Se voi ci pensate è pazzesco questo, cioè abbiamo delle persone che si ammalano perché prendono le medicine. Ma voi avete messo
You need to know that at least 20% of man's diseases are iatrogenic. That is, they are caused by taking medicines.
Poi leggete la composizione e poi in fondo avete una pappardella lunga così sulle controindicazioni. Allora,
This is quite absurd. There are people that get sick because they take medicine.
Maggiori delle capacità curative di quella medicina. Fate questa perché
Have you ever tried to read the dosage and the contraindications of the illustrative leaflets of the medicines? You will realize immediately that the contraindications are greater than the curative properties of the medicine.
Voi andate al supermercato, comprate una scatola di fagioli, una scatola di... Guardate dentro, non c'è solo scritto fagioli, ma c'è scritto colorante, additivo,
You must also always be aware of the composition of the products that you eat.
Lo stesso ritornando alle medicine.
In the supermarket, for example, you do not only buy canned beans, because inside there are also additives and preservatives that are harmful. The same is true for the medicines.
E mi ricordo quando ero bambino, il medico di campagna diceva la più grande medicina è il cibo, date da mangiare, dice quando sta male il primo.
Before modern times, the country doctor would advise his patients, the best medicine is the food you eat, and when you don't feel well, the best medicine is fasting or no food.
Capacità terapeutica, no? E quindi il recupero del nostro organismo. Quindi mi ricordo che mia nonna, quando io stavo male, i bambini stavano male, non si chiamava il pediatra, perché non c'era il pediatra.
In ancient Greece, Paracelsus, a great physician, treated fasting as therapy.
Diceva, il bambino sta male, non deve mangiare, oppure il nonno sta male, anziano, chiunque sta male, digiuno, brodino, acqua calda.
My grandmother, when we children were sick, didn't call the pediatrician because there wasn't one.
Queste erano cose che il medico diceva. Mezzo limone spremuto dentro, un po' d'acqua calda. Sono cose semplici, non c'è bisogno di andare, uno ha un mal di testa o sta male e si prende una pastiglia.
The family doctor suggested fasting and drinking hot water.
La natura, e cioè
The physician always suggested natural
il
therapies.
nostro mondo, circostanze, ci viene in aiuto. Purtroppo oggi la natura è contaminata, c'è questo da dire. E quindi c'è un grosso problema che, così come i nostri pensieri...
Today, unfortunately, nature is contaminated, as are our
I
thoughts.
cibi sono inquinati. Allora, purtroppo bisognerebbe alimentarci con degli alimenti di carattere biologico. E se voi vi alimentate con i
We therefore should feed ourselves with biologically grown foods, which help your organism and help the development of biological agriculture and its economy, which is clean.
E la seconda cosa buona, aiutate l'agricoltura biologica a svilupparsi e quindi aiutate in qualche modo anche altre persone e aiutate un'economia pulita a svilupparsi.
5 anni dopo le prestigiose indagini fatte al Yale University e al Johns Hopkins,
25 years after the prestigious studies done at Yale University and at Johns Hopkins, considered by many the most important medical school in the United States, Harvard University, carried out a study. It was supervised by Professor Howard Hyatt, who is rector of the Department of Public Health. This 5-year study was performed at the request of the state of New York at a cost of $3.1 million. It became the largest investigation into medical malpractice ever made in the United States. And the conclusion was that medical negligence in 1984 alone was responsible for 7,000 deaths in hospitals, as well as trauma for 99,000 patients, causing costs of nearly $900 million. And that's in New York State alone. Imagine the figures if we had taken the entire country into consideration. As I said before, 25 years after the investigations at Yale and Johns Hopkins, things are only getting worse.
Yale e Johns Hopkins, le cose stanno solo peggiorando. L'Associazione Medico Americano ha notato che negli anni 80 ci sono stato fatto 250.
No one less important than the American Medical Association noted that in the 1980s, 250 back operations were performed for every 100,000 inhabitants in the state of Utah. Now, that was between 4 and 5 times as many back operations as were performed anywhere in the entire United States, and 25 times as many operations as performed in England. It makes you wonder whether all the people who had suffered from backache had suddenly gone to live in Utah.